Hello all, this is Jeff, and yes, I've finally decided to come out from behind my PowerPoint slides and do an intro with a PTC, piece to camera, so I can now give you all a proper personal welcome. So this is my first go at trying to be a real YouTube presenter, so please go easy on me. If you want to encourage me to do more of this sort of stuff, then as I said, YouTube, please like and subscribe. I've only got another 999,965 subscribers to go until I get my golden YouTube plaque, but we can all but try. Now then, on to this presentation. PAM is dead. Long live RPAM. Okay, perhaps I've somewhat sensationalized the title just a teeny bit, but the inspiration for this presentation came to me after attending this year's Gartner IAM 2025 in London last March. So usually as a vendor, we attend conferences like Gartner because we're an exhibitor and also maybe we're doing a speaking slot, as you can see me in action right here. But this year we got the chance to attend some of the insightful Gartner talks. And the one that stood out for me was about PAM and remote access, something which has been labelled RPAM or remote PAM. So I went away from the conference with this message ringing in my ears. There is a chasm of risk in how traditional legacy PAM solutions handle remote access, and to address that, customers should look for solutions that come with all-encompassing remote access functionality, ideally built in versus integrated with external solutions. So it's been common knowledge for us at Admin By Request that the functionality of remote access has sort of had an odd relationship with PAM, and to understand how we got here, we sort of need to rewind a bit. So why don't we just strip this back and look at the original definition of PAM, and here is one I found that is nicely succinct. Privileged Access Management, PAM, is a cybersecurity strategy that secures, controls and monitors accounts with elevated permissions to protect critical systems and data from unauthorized access or misuse. Phew. This is sort of self-explanatory, but has this definition always been so broad? Doing a little digging around, the term PAM first emerged in the early 2000s and was adopted by products whose core functionality was the control and monitoring of privileged accounts. And this was very much in the pre-cloud era, so these solutions were designed and developed entirely for on-premises use cases, for example, filling a functionality gap with Windows Active Directory. Now, Admin By Request has been in the PAM EPM space now for 7 years, so we're very experienced in understanding the pros and cons of on-prem legacy PAM versus our own SaaS EPM model. And here are the most common points which implementers hit on what we call legacy PAMs. So they are designed for legacy on-prem architectures. The functionality is acquired in versus being developed internally. Because of that, you end up with a component-based system versus one that's modular and integrated. And then because of that, you get high complexity and risk of maybe different code bases. And because of all of that, you get a slow system which is expensive to implement. So these problems are all much common knowledge, but there is a sixth functionality omission which in legacy PAM people are only just waking up to. Total remote access. Okay, so what am I talking about here? Well, I define total remote access as the capability to handle the three fundamental types of remote access that almost all organizations need today. So remote support, so like remote support for user screen sharing, unattended access, so access to stuff that like servers and things that aren't operated by a user, and then vendor access, so that's getting third parties from outside onto devices you have inside. With these three main functionalities, you should be able to manage all types of remote access to every device in your organization with the same MFA controls, the same auditing, and the same screen recording, so no gaps. And here's the interesting thing, and something that I think is misunderstood by many. The A in PAM relates to the access or privilege, not system access, so either done locally or remotely. Legacy PAM assumes you're already securely on the system before you need to invoke those privileged commands. So a good analogy is to think of legacy PAM as being the lock, but not the door. And this is why I think RPAM or remote PAM received a lot of conference time this year. So here's a crazy fact. Remote access has never been categorized as a security product. And I think it's this which might have something to do with the problem. Since time began, remote access has been considered a functional means to connect across a network, with the security bit happening once the connectivity part has been established. And probably showing my age here a bit, but if we go back to the start, we came from PC Anywhere. Does anyone remember PC Anywhere? I don't know. Then we went to remote desktop with or without the need for VPNs. And then more up to date, we have solutions like TeamViewer, which dominate the remote access market today. I think the last time I checked, TeamViewer had something like 40% of the entire market. Of course, all these products would require a user to authenticate to start remote control, but they were still considered management tools and not security products. I don't know, but if attitudes were different back then, but today I can't help thinking that is just plain wrong. Because these remote access management products have become so entrenched, I guess legacy PAM vendors thought it was going to be a tough market for them to enter. And perhaps PAM vendors felt they did not want to reinvent the wheel and attempt to replicate already highly evolved and mature remote access functionality into their PAM solutions. So up to now, the maker of the door and the lock have endured a sort of uneasy coexistence. With that in mind, if you're going shopping for a remote access solution, what sort of solutions are out there? So let's do a quick rundown. Okay, so for starters, remote access with privileged access management solutions. So this would be a remote access capability that you've purchased with what we would call a legacy PAM solution. So let's have a look at the kind of the pros of getting your remote access solution in your legacy PAM solution. So so first of all, it would likely be a solution that would be what we call on-premises. It would be highly customizable because these legacy PAM solutions generally are. It would support multi-protocol and probably also the ability to connect to systems with an agent, and also for systems that do not run agents, and many integrations would probably be possible also as well. So those are the kind of like the pros. Okay, the drawbacks, well, we've already talked about some of these, but of course, legacy PAM is highly complex. That would mean that it would be difficult and disruptive to implement. Vendor access, we find, is generally available, but normally an add-on, an extra cost. It would be, speaking of cost, very, very expensive to implement one of these solutions. And also the legacy PAM is sort of like an infrastructure access focus, is not something you would generally use for remote support. So if we look at the kind of scorecard, we've got kind of no remote support screen share functionality, but we have kind of support for the agentless access and also vendor third-party access, although that would be an extra cost. So that is kind of like the first option. Okay, so let's have a look now at the second option, which are the kind of screen share solutions, as I call them. So let's have a look at the pros for those guys. So well, yes, easy to implement and deploy. So we're thinking about our TeamViewer. That's exactly the case here. It would be kind of cloud-based for management-wise, so you wouldn't need any infrastructure. Again, that is partly the easy implementation and deployment. It would be low cost, and actually some RMM solutions actually include remote screen share in the solution itself, although that would be probably functionality would be not as complete as your TeamViewer type system. And these systems also would have help desk integrations, and with the agent-based approach you get more features, and as I said, you might not get quite as many with your RMM version. Okay, so the drawbacks of your screen share solution, so you don't have any of that PAM EPM functionality built in. So essentially you're just connecting to something, and you would need to, probably be a full admin to do anything in a remote support functionality for the end user who didn't have admin. There's no agentless option here, so it's a completely agent-based solution. Usually these systems would have a proprietary protocol, hence the reason why you need the agent, and maybe also security concerns, and it's also hard to contain and manage sprawl, generally because users themselves can download this solution and install it to perhaps enable a user might do it to enable access to their system from home, for example, and that might be done out of out of line from the company's standard remote access solution. And in kind of like a flip side for the PAM option, this has a desktop focus, so this is not really for infrastructure management. So looking at the scorecard, we have a tick for remote support. We don't have the agentless unattended access. And I think also vendor third-party access, and you wouldn't want to give a vendor access to something like TeamViewer. That would be kind of tricky. So I think that is pretty accurate. And then we move on now to the third type of remote access solution, which is the Secure Access, Secure Edge, or deemed SASE. So we have a look at the strengths of those solutions. They are, I'd say, they're probably in between the PAM and the kind of the agent-based solutions in terms of implementation difficulty. Certainly not as difficult to implement as a full legacy PAM. They would also generally include a secure networking component, so that would be like a VPN, corporate VPN solution. So I'm not talking about VPN access to kind of remote offices. I'm talking about VPN, cloud VPN solutions, kind of private access, internet access solutions to enable users to use a hotel wireless hotspot securely. Both agent and agentless access is generally included with the SASE, and also you would get rich protocol support, so RDP, SSH, VNC, and also HTTP and HTTPS. And some SASEs, because SASEs generally come from the world of firewall vendors, they would normally also include or give you the option for some sort of URL filtering as well. How about the drawbacks? Okay, so again, a bit like the agent-based screen share, these SASE solutions don't have PAM or EPM built in. They very much come from a networking focus, so you will be involving proxies and VPNs, and we're generally talking about access to things and then control and auditing. So for example, centralized screen sharing and centralized auditing, that's not really, from what I've seen from SASE solutions, something that is generally a big focus on those products. They are expensive at scale and again dependent on monitoring and management because there are VPNs involved. And again, a little bit like the PAM based solution, these are more infrastructure and based systems and not really kind of remote user support. So again, if we have a look at the scorecard here, no to remote support and screen share, but we have a tick for unattended access and also vendor access as well. So to sum up then for the kind of shopping list, you can see kind of the kind of spread of functionalities, and that your legacy PAM doesn't have your screen sharing, neither your SASE solution, but your screen sharing solution, they don't have the other solutions of legacy PAM and SASE. So, and you can also see helpfully at the bottom here we have Admin By Request EPM and SRA, which I think sort of fulfills the criteria of an RPAM, has all those 4 columns ticked, and that is very good to see indeed. So Admin By Request, I would say we have the total remote and PAM and EPM, and that is RPAM. So we are designed for cloud digital workplace from conception, from day one. 100% of our solutions are developed internally and built as a single solution that will work seamlessly together. We have a unified zero trust platform, logging and approval system, so everything is centrally managed on the platform, and our secure remote access solution is VPN-less, and our EPM solution is passwordless. Okay, so I think that's a very nice introduction. I think now what I'd like to do is to take you through some demonstrations of the 3 kind of main fundamental types of RPAM use that you should be able to do with your PAM remote access solution. So let's take a look. Okay, so let's have a look at the first RPAM use case, which is remote support with screen share and an integrated PAM EPM. So let us switch over to our demo system. On the left, we have our Zero Trust platform with EPM and Secure Remote Access integrated into the same solution. And on the right hand side, we have the user system, and I've configured this user system to be quite restricted. So the user is not able to run anything that is sort of a system file. In fact, actually the user can't run anything as admin because I blocked them from running anything apart from I've allowed them to elevate a USB formatting tool called Rufus, because they need to be able to format USB keys. And also I've allowed them to elevate Device Manager via a tray tool here, which is one of our features in our EPM. So those are the only two things the user can do. Right, so the user has a problem and they need to request support. So to do that, they would go to the icon, they would go Remote Support and invoke it like this. So with our system, it's not like the user can give someone outside pretending to be a support person a token. They would have to submit a request through here. So let's do that. I need some remote support, please. Always good to be polite. Send that through like so. Okay, so on the portal then, I'm the on-duty help desk person and I would get a notification, and here it is. So I would now decide whether or not I want to go and do this support. So in this case, I'm going to hit approve, like so. The remote support user gets the notification. So, and by the way, I've disabled the MFA that would normally happen here just to speed up the demo. So I'm going to hit yes. Okay, and now you see the remote on the left hand side is what the remote supporter sees, and on the right hand side is the end user. So as the remote supporter, pretty soon I find a problem, and that is that I'm simply sharing this user screen, so I'm inheriting all the admin by request settings and restrictions of that user. So there's not really a whole lot that I can do to help this user. Now, without integrated EPM, with your traditional screen share tools, I would need to elevate my entire support session to admin. And that means I can run anything on this user's system as admin, and some of those things might be malicious, suspicious, and not good to elevate, because who knows where the user has got these particular files from. So we don't really want to do that. We want to provide the help desk staff with the granular EPM controls, just like the user, but obviously without so many of the restrictions, but still with the same protections. So here's how we do that. What we're going to do is the support person is going to invoke the support assistance mode, which is here, and going to hit start. And this is where the support person would have to authenticate as them. Now I'm going to use a generic account here, but in real life this would be the support person's authentication details. Also support single sign-on. Again, for the demo, I'm just using the standard credentials here. Okay, so right now you see that we have this assistance mode timer running. So what this means is that the support person is now switched the context of the EPM settings from the users to their own. And this means that the help desk staff in question has access to more tray tools that we've given in the help desk profile. So for example, I can go to services and stop and start services. Maybe that was part of the user's problem, like so. The user couldn't run anything before, but now as a help desk person, I can run pretty much anything I like as admin. Of course, if I wanted to configure some restrictions for help desk, I could do that as well. And anything that I'm allowed to run, I can decide to run as well. Okay. So if there was something that was potentially malicious or suspicious, the running or requesting to run that as a help desk person would still go through the same protections that you would have with the EPM. So with the simulator file here, you can see that I'm not allowed to run something that is malicious suspicious. So that's pretty much a lifesaver in a scenario where a help desk person is helping a user. You don't want to create any sort of inadvertent insider infections. And so that is the benefit of having both users, non-privileged users, and technically sort of non-privileged help desk people using the same EPM, just with different settings. And that really is sort of, in my view anyway, the whole point of RPAM is that it has to work for not just local users, but for remote users too. So I think we're going to close that down, and we're going to move on to the second use case, which is unattended access with an integrated PAM EPM solution. So we've moved on now from the first use case, which is a user needed a support person to share a screen and share the profile. Now we want to look at the use case where a technician needs to access something that does not have a user on it, and so we would call that unattended access. So let's have a look at the kind of demo setup here. So I am going to do access to a server, so that is definitely something that would be unattended, and I'm going to click on remote here. And again, I've disabled MFA just to make it a little bit demo a little bit smoother, but usually when I have that enabled and I click remote, I would be challenged to pass the MFA test. So I'm just going to hit remote here, and that is going to do a remote connection to the server. Now, the two things that are the case in this particular configuration, the first thing you may have noticed, I did not require a user a name and password. The configuration here is for a passwordless access. So I give a user that has access to the portal access to a specific server, and I don't need to give them credentials to do that. And the credentials only work on this particular server. So it's not like I can use this server as a jump box to get onto other things. The only credentials I have work on this server, and I don't need to give them out. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is that I've been given access to this server as a non-administrator. You can see here that the Admin By Request icon is green, which signifies that the user is non-privileged. So back to the problem. If I was to fire up the Edge, this is a cached page. So if I hit refresh, you'll see that the web server is definitely not looking like it's very happy. So I need to go and see what the problem is. So maybe the service has stopped. So I would need to go and start it again. But to do that, I would need a privileged access. So to do that, I can go and use a tray tool that I've configured for this particular user. And I can click services like so. And I can show a code of conduct, which is another great thing about using an EPM with that functionality. And then services would appear behind, and I can scoot down the bottom, and we can see, oh dear, the web service is stopped. So I need to start that like so, which I can do because I'm running this in an admin context, and I can close that now and hit refresh, and voila, we're back in business. We have a working web server. So really that is quite a basic demo, but it just shows you again the benefit of having both the door, so the access to the server, but once you're on the server, you're not privileged. You need the EPM to do the granular privileged elevations that you need, just enough admin for just the kind of right type of thing you need to do with it. So that is the second use case. And we'll move on now to the third use case, which would be passwordless external unattended vendor access with approval and PAM EPM. So then, vendor access is something that you would generally get with as an option, typically with a legacy PAM vendor. But with Admin By Request, it is just included as part of our secure remote access solutions. And we don't charge per vendor. You just basically have to pay per device you're accessing, and that encompasses all those three types of access we talked about, so the screen share, the unattended, and also vendor access, all included in that same solution with the EPM integration as well, if you have got that product with your subscription. So let us have a little look now at how the vendor access works. So just to kind of refamiliarize ourselves, we've got on the left the portal, and on the right hand side we have got our vendor access portal, which is called access.work, and this is the portal you would give, the URL you would give to your vendor to be able to access something in your estate that you want them to help you out with. And so you would actually enter the vendor's details into your portal, like so. As I said, in this case, it's a contractor, and then you would restrict them to access.work only. And then you create subsettings that would allow you to apply very granular access to that particular vendor. Okay, so as a vendor, I am going to log in to the vendor access portal, and I'm going to use my own MFA to do that, and that establishes my identity. So we have here the single system that we want the vendor to gain access to, which just happens to be that same server that we used in the last part of the presentation, that server with the dodgy web server. And you can see here also that we have a little padlock, and that denotes that the vendor is going to need to get approval before they gain access. So, I can give a vendor access to something, but I actually do need them to request approval every time they want to access this thing. So I know they're actually doing something on this system right now. And maybe it's not an appropriate time for them to gain access. Maybe there's some patches going on. So I really do want to have an approval workflow when this vendor is going to try to connect to this system. So let's go ahead and connect as the vendor. You would expect I need to type in a reason. So I need to fix that web server again. And I'm going to click submit, like so. And you can see here that the request has been submitted, the padlock is still locked, and over in the request area here, if I just hit refresh, you will see the request now appears, and you can see the reason. So at this point now, as the administrator of the portal, I can then decide whether or not I want to allow this contractor in to perform this work. And if I do, then I'm going to click approve, like so. The contractor will now get a notification, and if I hit refresh here, you will see this little padlock change from a lock to open, which means I now have permission to go in and do the work. So I'm going to click connect. And bearing in mind, again, I've disabled the MFA just to make the demo go a little bit smoother. And just as before, where I was getting unattended access to something, I don't need to give that contractor credentials. The credentials that are being used here are all managed by the unattended access solution. And also, I don't want to give my vendor, external contractor, any admin rights at all. So you can see here, just as before with the other user, that the vendor does not have any privilege at all, and I can give this vendor access to elevate a specific thing. So that could be like the security event logs, event log viewer, or in this case, it could be again the services. So let's go and have a look at the web server. Of course, it's no longer working, and we can then go in as the vendor, go to services, and then again the code of conduct, and then find the service that's problematic. Again, this is all running as admin, but nothing else. Start the service, and then happy days. Again, the service is now working again. So that's a much better situation than having to give a vendor, round the clock, full admin access. And don't forget that everything that is done here as the vendor is all logged in the audit log. You can see it would be here. Unattended access setting log, and then you could also see it's running here, and I could also request a kind of screen recording of all the stuff the vendor did when they were in here. So I've got a absolutely full audit trail. So that is really the third kind of sort of type of remote access that I feel that organisations need, and the kind of third type of remote access that Admin By Request Secure Remote Access gives you as a customer. So I guess, how about the takeaway statement? Well, get a solution that provides both the door and the lock. I think that's a pretty simplistic final statement, but I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it's proved useful to you, and we hope also I've given you a little introduction to the concept of RPAM, what is out there, and how I feel Admin By Request really addresses this particular issue that was talked about so much in this year's Gartner IAM conference. And that is all from me for now. Again, hopefully I'll be doing another presentation soon, but until then, goodbye and toodaloo. Cheerio.